What is up, guys? So I've been doing a lot of self-reflection lately, and I've come to a crossroads, and I think like I've rode the futurist wagon as far as it will go. The wheels are breaking down, and I got to choose a new vehicle to get me where I need to go. And people keep telling me I need to return to tradition, and I got to go back. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to return to tradition, and we're traditionalism forever now. So I hope everyone's been doing okay. Everyone's been like obeying all the traffic laws, wearing their seatbelts, cowering at danger, and obeying all the rules and all that good stuff like a traditionalist man always should. But yeah, happy April, everybody. I've got Melantip here, Alkaz, and Luke. What's up, guys?
Salam alaikum.
Yo.
What's up?
Yeah. I'm just gonna state this up front. Like, I'm not actually gonna stay in character the whole episode. It's gonna be a regular episode of Futurism Forever. We're just reading a traditionalist text. We're gonna read some Evola, chapter 4, from Ride the Tiger, from the precursors of nihilism to the lost youth and the protest movement. So, why are the hippie generation did the things they did is what we're going to explore. Who's to blame? What's up, Pierre? Thanks for watching. Should we get right into it, or do you guys have anything you want to talk about first? We published a cool story by FF Regular CSD today that he wrote called "The Tale of the Victim of Chungus." Those of you who are active on Telegram should know Artemio. It's pretty funny. I think there's a lot of in-jokes. So it's funny to us, but I'm not sure like an outsider will really get it. It's kind of like funny in a retarded way. But check that out. We published it on the blog today at futurismforever.com. So check it out. Alkaz is going to be dropping a... do you want to talk about yoga a little bit in Fume and... Guido Keller?
Yeah, I guess that relates to traditionalism because I talk about Evola and Gwinon in it. But I'm dropping an article that talks about Guido Keller and his yoga group and its relationship with Evola and Gwinon and like the German concept of the man of Bund.
Cool. Yeah, I quote like Evola in an article I'm working on too on dogmatism and futurism, which is going to be a series actually, because like the futurists weren't dogmatic, and people like accuse us of having like this dogmatic approach to futurism where we just like echo everything Marinetti said. But like it's going to be a series. I'm thinking it's going to be 3 parts, and the first part is on war. And yeah, I do talk about Evola there. So like a bunch of us do like Evola and like traditionalist thinkers too. We don't embrace their entire worldview. We're going in the other direction, but there are concepts that he talks about that I think are good. So like we're not nearly as rigid as people seem to think we are. Like we get the stupidest criticisms like, how can you be a futurist if you like eating pasta? Don't you know what Marinetti said about pasta? It's like, yeah, but you know, I like pasta. I'm gonna like part 2 is probably gonna be about sex, and I kind of lean more on Valentine to same point of view. And we've got an episode on the Futurist Manifesto on Lust coming up soon, which is in stark contrast to Marinetti's take on like sex and relationships. He basically promoted voluntary celibacy, which I don't promote that. Anyone who follows me on Twitter should know that. We're not dogmatic about futurism. The world has changed. It's been 100 years. The culture has changed. We're in a different country. Our approach to futurism has to be different. Like, we don't need to be super excited about cars and airplanes anymore. This shit's commonplace. But anyway, I'm just kind of rambling. Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about before we get started, or?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Did Evola like Muslims?
Yes, but not to the same extent that Guinon did. Guinan actually became like a Sufi Muslim, converted. So did Valentine to St. Point, actually. She moved to Egypt and resisted Western imperialism and converted to Islam later in life.
Yeah, she became like an anti-imperialist writer, and she was very anti-British.
Yeah,
Okay, that's nice.
So
Which
is
is-
Guinan.
which is based. They're both French, and yeah, she was part of the futurist movement, but like, yeah, she kind of went the Guinan route. Alcaz and Luke probably know more about it than I do. I'm not as well versed on like traditionalist thought. I have read my fair share of Avila, but I haven't really explored deeper than that. I've read all the like his main books, some of the more obscure ones, but
Yeah, Guinan is less fascist aligned like Evola is. He's way more.
Evola
he's
is
way
more
more-
political.
Yeah, way
Yeah.
less political. It's more about religion and metaphysics.
Avila really wasn't a fascist either. Like he worked with them on this or that, but like he was very critical of both
Yeah, but
like
he was
Italian
fascist
fascism and
fascist adjacent at the very least.
Well, he, in his own words, would I forget which text it's in, but he says we can call ourselves fascists insofar as like what's good in fascism. So he wasn't afraid of calling himself a fascist.
It's a right wing critique of fascism.
Yeah,
he
would
basically
critique it.
just said when the fascists agree with us, we're fascists. When they disagree with us, we're anti-fascists.
Yeah. So his critique of fascism a lot of times gets used for like coping of like no. See, like traditionalism is anti-fascist too. Like he was very pro-fascism. He believed that, no matter what happened, with like the Third Reich or anything, that it would have been much better world if the Axis had won the war. So, and he says that, and he, never changed his opinion on being pro-Axis, pro-Hitler, and pro-Mussolini.
okay, so that gives a little background on Avila. We're not doing his full biography. I think people already kind of know who he is and they know about this, but he's basically a household name in like dissident right circles. Everybody's read a little Avila. So, but we haven't covered him on the podcast yet. I thought April Fool's Day would be a good excuse to, because we all kind of like him. Our views are nuanced on him though. Like I'm probably going to be a little critical here and there. And we'll see what the other guys say. But anyway, I'm going to start reading and we'll break here or there. I'll probably read like the first 2 pages and then we'll stop and talk about it. It's not a really long article. It's like 7 pages and we'll get through it that way. Anyway, without further ado, from the precursors of nihilism to the lost youth and the protest movement, from Ride the Tiger by Julius Evola. A current of thought and a historiography exists that represent this process of rebellion and dissolution, or at least its first phases, as having been something positive and as a victory. It is another aspect of contemporary nihilism, whose undeclared basis is a sort of shipwreck euphoria. It is well known that the phases of dissolution, beginning with Illuminism and liberalism and proceeding gradually to Immanentist historicism, first idealistic, then materialist and Marxist, have been interpreted and celebrated as those of the emancipation and reaffirmation of man, of progress of the spirit, and of true humanism. We shall see later how Nietzsche's program for the post-nihilist period arose, in its worst aspect, out of this very mentality. For the present, there is just one point to be made. No God has ever controlled man. Divine despotism is a fantasy, and so is most of that to which, in the Illuminist and revolutionary interpretation, the world of tradition owes its ordering from above and its orientation toward the above, its hierarchical system, its various forms of legitimate authority and sacral power. No, the true essential foundation of this whole system is the particular inner structure, the capacity of recognition, and the various inborn interests of a type of man who nowadays has virtually disappeared. Man at a given moment wanted to be free. He was allowed to be so, and he was allowed to throw off the chains that did not bind him, so much as sustain him. And thereupon, he was allowed to suffer all the consequences of his liberation, following ineluctably up to his present state, in which God is dead, or God has withdrawn, as Bernanos says. and existence becomes the field of absurdity where everything is possible and everything is allowed. Nothing has acted in all of this but the law that is known in the Far East as the law of actions and reactions, which is objectively beyond good and evil, and beyond any petty morality. In recent times, the fracture has extended from the moral plane to the existential and ontological. Values that were previously questioned and shaken only by a few precursors in relative isolation now lose all relevance for general consciousness in everyday life. One is no longer dealing with problems, but with the state of affairs in which the immoralist pathos of yesterday's rebels seems increasingly old-fashioned and incongruous. For some time, a good part of Western humanity has considered it a natural thing for existence to lack any real meaning, and for it not to be ordered by any higher principle, arranging their lives in the most bearable and least disagreeable way they can. Of course, this has its counterpart and inevitable consequence in an inner life that is more and more reduced, formless, feeble, and elusive, and in a growing dissolution of any uprightness and character. Another aspect of the same process is a regime of compensations and anesthetics that is no less deceptive for not being recognized as such. A character in Hemingway summarizes it when he says, "Religion is the opium of the people, and now economics is the opium of the people, along with patriotism." What about sexual intercourse? Was that an opium of the people? But drink was a sovereign opium of the people. Oh, an excellent opium. Although some prefer the radio, another opium of the people, a cheap one. But once this sensation occurs, the facade may start to waver, the assemblage to collapse, and the dissolution of values is followed by the denial of everything one has resorted to in order to make up for the senselessness of a life henceforth reduced to itself. Then comes the existential theme of nausea and disgust, of the void that is sensed behind the whole system of bourgeois life. The theme of the absurdity of the whole new, earthbound civilization, where the sensation is most acute. There occur forms of existential trauma and states that have been called the spectrality of events, the degradation of objective reality, existential alienation. One also notices that the sporadic experiences of intellectuals and artists of the past become modes of behavior occurring in the natural course of things for certain groups of the younger generation. So let's pause there for a minute. Does anyone have any thoughts on that opening? They want to
Is
share?
opium the only drug he knows?
It's a nod to Karl Marx, religion as the opium of the masses, or opiate of the masses. I think it was
So,
Karl Marx who said that, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Wait, Avola likes Karl Marx? What?
He doesn't
He's an
like
influential-
Karl Marx.
Yeah, he's an influential philosopher on Western philosophy.
Oh, but just like some takes of Marx. Like that. Or like some.
I think it's more like he's just referencing him.
Okay.
He wasn't actually saying that, though. He was quoting Hemingway. He doesn't say which book it's from. But religion is the opium of the people, and now economics is the opium of the people, along with patriotism. What about sexual intercourse? Was that an opium of the people? But drink was a sovereign opium of the people. Oh, an excellent opium. Although some prefer the radio, another opium of the people, a cheap one. So he's talking about how, like, modern man has fallen. You know, we used to have, like, a spiritual life that is now gone. Like, religion used to be the opium of the people. It was an excellent form of, like, population control, of getting people to behave themselves and enforcing, like, a common code of conduct, of morality, of honor. And that's gone now. It's being replaced with economics, along with patriotism. So thoughts on that quote by Hemingway? Because do you think that's accurate, or
I think
you sound like you want to say something?
I think
but-
Evola wouldn't agree because he
Yeah.
would. I think, like from an Evolian perspective, he would say that the latter options that you gave are just like material, whereas religion fundamentally comes from like this universal order, this concept of truth of how the world works. So I would say that ultimately they're very different, even though they can serve a similar function.
Yeah. Yeah, what else does he talk about in that opening? And
I think that a religion can complement the state and like the natural order because it's a way of teaching people about the natural order and the organic state. But if a religion goes against it, then it really is an opiate of the masses.
okay. CSD's in the chat. He wants to know if you read his story and did you like it?
I think I should have been included more in the story.
You died like in the second sentence, CSD.
Yeah.
You kind of wrote him out. He probably stopped reading after that because he's a total narcissist. But
I mean,
just
I did.
joking. But yeah, I already talked about it and recommended people check out the blog. It's pretty funny. I think it's very in-jokey, and like people who aren't like tight with our circle might be lost on them. It got liked by actually autistic bloggers, which I found funny. They think you're autistic, CSD. So I don't know, take that how you will. I checked out their blog, and like everyone else like on their list or who they featured. We're not actually featured, he just liked it, but like everyone who's featured on that blog is like actually autistic. So I don't know. I found it funny. But yeah, back to Evola. Sorry, got a little distracted there. What else? So yeah, he's saying he was allowed to, man at a given moment wanted to be free. He was allowed to be so, and he was allowed to throw off the chains that did not bind him, so much as sustain him. Thereupon, he was allowed to suffer all the consequences of his liberation, following ineluctably up to his present state in which God is dead, or God is withdrawn, as Bernanos says, and existence becomes the field of absurdity, where everything is possible and everything is allowed. Nothing has acted in all of this but the law that is known in the Far East as the law of actions and reactions, which is objectively beyond good and evil and beyond any petty morality. Thoughts on that passage?
I mean, it's kind of mainstream to say that God is dead, not gonna lie.
It's very Nietzschean, I guess.
Yeah. Evola was heavily inspired by Nietzsche. It's kind of what pushed him in like a traditionalist direction. I think it was like the first thing. Initially, he was a Dadaist, and he was really into Stirner. And then his art ho girlfriend dumped him. He became suicidal, and he read Nietzsche, and like he became a traditionalist. I think that's how the story goes. Am I missing something?
No, that's actually pretty. Yeah, it's pretty accurate to the truth.
Yeah.
Bro, what?
So the young Evola would have fit in Futurism Forever pretty well, but
So he
heartbreak.
eventually like he didn't disavow Nietzsche, but he essentially called him a nihilist and said like there was good vitality in Nietzsche and there was a good mindset in Nietzsche, but it wasn't enough. He considered it like a noble path in today's society. I believe he said there were three noble paths. There was one, you could kill yourself, be a Nietzschean, or then be a traditionalist.
Why kill yourself?
Yeah, like I think there's even something where he said specifically like slit your wrists in a bathtub or something, like the old Romans used to do.
Why?
Just because he said it's the only noble path in this world is to either be a Nietzschean, kill yourself, or to be a traditionalist. Everything else is just like bug life.
Interesting.
I think Evola read a bit of Japanese suicide shit.
Yeah, I'm sure he knew about
Emo Evola.
Yeah.
People call bleed out to death because it's cool.
Yeah. Melantip has recently become a huge Yukio Mishima fan. What do you like about Mishima, Melon? Just curious. It's like not on topic, but this is like a lighthearted stream.
Yeah.
So
Also,
we're allowed to shoot the shit and talk about other things too. We will return to the text, but
And of course, Mishima is a traditionalist, so it kind of fits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
is he
to be honest,
traditional? Like I would consider him kind of a modernist. He like there's aspects of tradition. He was into like the samurai tradition, and like he committed seppuku. I'm probably butchering pronunciation.
It's seppuku, I think, right?
Seppuku.
Seppuku.
Yeah, I'm not Japanese, but yeah, he was in aspects of tradition, but stylistically, he was very modernist. I wouldn't describe him as a traditionalist exactly.
Okay.
If I recall right, wasn't he very inspired by Greece?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, that's what I always liked about him. I
very
like his view of beauty and aesthetics.
very
Like, yeah, the Western ideas.
Yeah. I like Mishima too. I like him mostly just because his outlook on aesthetics and his view on bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff. It's fine. It's very Bappian. So
yeah, Luke, I've been we've been talking about fucking Mishima for like 5 years now. You hated Mishima back.
What? I never fucking hated Mishima.
Yeah,
you did. No bullshit. I was probably just trolling you because he's like
you
Asian.
Call him a faggot, and so you can push
I'm under red on Mishima. I read The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea when I was like 18, and I didn't really know who he was at the time. I was really into Akira Kurosawa movies, and I thought it was going to be like a samurai story, and it was like this disturbing story involving kind of like the Oedipus complex. Like there's some weird incest shit going on. It was not what I was expecting when I read it, but
the Japanese being Japanese.
Yeah, we are doing an episode on patriotism, so that
I've read that. That is good.
Yeah, that's in a couple of weeks, so that might spark my interest and get me back into it. My like solo reading of Yukio Mishima on the death of James Dean, which I did like early on in the channel, is one of like my best viewed solo readings. So I do think there is like demand from our audience for a Mishima episode.
Yeah, well, Mishima's kind of like right now he's like kind of a not mainstream thing, but like he's like everybody's talking about Mishima right now, especially on Twitter. He's pretty big right now.
Yeah, he's big with the dissident right, but like he's one of those guys like Ezra Pound or like D'Annunzio or who else? Like Ernst Junger, I guess, who like fascists and like third positionists and stuff can like him, but so can people from other walks of life because they're just like objectively good artists and writers, and like people can find things that they can like about him without like.
PewDiePie likes him.
Yeah. I don't
his
watch
favorite
PewDiePie.
author.
I know who he is, but
it's his favorite author. I think PewDiePie have more subs than anybody else on YouTube?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, his favorite author is Yukio Mishima. So
based.
Yeah, he has videos on it too. It's interesting.
I have to see it later.
Mishima's a very good writer. Like he gets into that like fucking the soul of Japan, of like the Japanese spirit.
Yeah, his writing style is fucking epic, especially like in Sun and Steel.
Sun and Steel is good.
He like fucking talks about it, but I like it very much how it's written.
Luke, have you read anything besides Sun and Steel?
Patriotism.
The
20-page book.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
It was hard reading for you.
What?
I said it was hard reading for you.
Oh, the 40 pages. Yeah, really took some of my brain power to get through that one. No, I read that one when I was like 16, I think. Patriotism. Oh, really? That was the first thing I read by Yukio Mishima. Yeah.
Yeah, you should come back for that episode.
Oh yeah, I'm willing to talk.
Yeah, I think we're doing it in 2 weeks. I'll double check the schedule and get back to you on that one. But it's coming up pretty soon. Next week is Art of Noises by Luigi Russolo, and then it's 2 weeks after that, so it's in 3 weeks. But yeah, I think we've talked about Mishima enough.
I'll say one thing about Mishima that kind of factors back what we were saying before. Like Mishima is kind of like what Evola was talking about, but instead of taking like the Nietzschean path, he took the traditionalist path. He took the suicide path, obviously, as we all know.
Yeah,
which I think is kind of sad and a critique of Mishima, you could say, because like I think he was such like a literary figure that he should have taken the Nietzschean path or even the traditionalist path.
Well, he also took the like the dramatic path. Like he really believed in like a beautiful death and the aesthetics and like the aesthetics of the Greeks. So that was like very life affirming for him, was to die in like a beautiful way.
Yeah, I get.
So
I get
I think he had to do it to be happy, or to at least be happy with the life he lived, or
Yeah,
satisfied.
that's an interesting discussion, I guess.
Yeah, just one comment about Mishima. I like that guy, but he's disgustingly gay.
He was not gay.
If you read
He's reading Confessions of a Mask, which is infamously
read
his gayest
His
book.
family
So.
really wanted a lawsuit under Japanese law that legally said he wasn't gay. Like they sued a fucking guy who said he was Mishima's lover. Mishima's not gay. There's no evidence for it.
Yeah.
Have you read the fucking book?
Okay,
Yeah,
so if you write about
loads of evidence.
wait, so Militant, if you have a homosexual character in your book, that makes you gay.
No, Confession of Musk is about him and his fucking childhood. Like, I will believe in that he didn't fuck any men, but he definitely had homosexual thoughts. It's kind of disgusting. I'll be real.
I think
dude, Outcast, you've been leading me astray. You keep telling me that there's no proof that Mishima was.
There is no proof. Nigga. Fucking,
okay, but if he's talking about in his youth having like homosexual, like
Confessions of a Mask is
Bro,
not like a fucking autobiography. It's a book.
yeah,
Yeah.
He just likes writing about very homoerotic themes, and he's really into the male form.
And it was very based
there's no evidence to support that.
And his book was very based around his own childhood, but not the gay part.
Wagner was into homoeroticism. Like,
no, I think the homoeroticism is bullshit. I think that gets used against people too much.
Yeah, I think Mishima definitely had homoerotic parts in his childhood. I don't think that makes him gay.
He is a fucking homoeroticist. You fall in love with a guy because he has
straight
cool
and be into homoerotic stuff, dude.
This
Wagner.
guy dressed himself as a woman at the
No, he didn't. His
Yes,
grandmother.
he did.
His grandmother forced him to dress like a girl.
No, I meant about the.
Yeah, I agree with CSD on this one personally.
In like Japanese noble society, it was like custom to dress young boys as girls until they hit puberty.
Jesus fucking Christ, I hate Japan.
That was the same in European society, though. Like, look at fucking Churchill as a kid. He was dressed up like a girl.
Well, Marinetti famously talked about how all British boys are homosexuals.
Every single European noble society, they all dress like, even Italian society, Gio. They all.
I think you're pulling this out of your ass. To be
not the Italians, dude.
I don't know about
Italians
the
are just
Gibagoos.
flamboyant, but they fuck women. So.
Well, that's like wait. This is a funny joke. I'll just save this will be good. That's like the thing where it's like this guy's talking about. He's like, yeah, the Mediterranean cultures, they're really great. You had the Greeks who invented sex, and then you had the Italians who tried it with women.
Yeah, Mishima. While we're talking about Mishima, I know it's like way off topic, but Mishima's favorite writer was actually Georges Bataille, who we're starting our Bataille series tomorrow. It'll probably drop on Sunday, maybe Saturday night, but we're recording the first installment, so it'll be like the Bonneau Gang. We're going through Visions of Excess. We'll probably it's mostly short essays, so it's a collection of short essays. So we'll probably do like 3 or 4 of them an episode until we get to the end. I got it mapped out. It'll carry us through to like mid-October or so. But yeah, we're starting that tomorrow. He was Mishima's favorite writer. He actually wrote the foreword for My Mother, which is a book about incest. But
Japan, bro.
Yeah, that's coming up. It's Bataille's philosophy, which I'm less familiar with. I've read a lot of his fiction, like Story of the Eye. In my opinion, is the greatest romance of the 20th century. It's a beautiful story, highly recommended. But
don't read under 18. At least be over the age of 18 to read it.
I think you should read it to your kids as a bedtime story. You have children, you should read it to them.
Bro, he will definitely turn out as straight and not be a gay.
Well, Story of the Eye is not gay.
Yeah, it's not gay.
It's not gay. It's hetero. They're
But-
just into some weird, freaky shit.
Yeah, if you read it to a kid, he would probably have some weird fetishes.
Yeah, I would say 18 plus. Like your
Yeah.
sexual identity should be like kind of formed already before you read it. I wouldn't want to put weird ideas in young people's heads. Yeah, that's like an 18 plus. But this is like his philosophy. There, it definitely gets weird though. Like we're gonna be reading the Solar Anus tomorrow night. So yeah, it's coming up. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to the text because we've gone way off track. So all right. So one also notices that the sporadic experiences of intellectuals and artists of the past become modes of behavior occurring in the natural course of things for certain groups of the younger generation. Only yesterday it was a matter of writers, painters, and damned poets living on the edge, often alcoholics, mingling their talents with the climate of existential dissolution and with irrational rebellion against established values. Typical in this regard is the case of Rimbaud, whose extreme form of rebellion was the renunciation of his own genius, poetic silence, and immersion in practical activity. Another is the case of Lautréamont, driven by existential trauma to the morbid exaltation of evil, horror, and formless elementarity. Maldoror, the personage of his poems, says that he has received life like a wound and forbidden the suicide from curing his injury. Then there are those isolated individuals given to adventure, like Jack London and the early Ernst Jünger, who seek new horizons on distant lands and seas, while for the others everything seems in order, safe and sound, as under the banner of science they hymn the triumphal march of progress, scarcely troubled by the noise of anarchist bombs. We're going to look at that sentence or that passage in detail when we stop, but I'll continue. Already after World War I, processes of this type had begun to spread, announcing the final phases of nihilism. At first, such harbingers remained at the margins of life, on the frontier zone of art. The most significant and radical of them all was perhaps Dadaism, the end result of the deepest impulses that had nourished the various movements of avant-garde art. But Dadaism negated the very categories of art, showing the transition to the chaotic forms of a life deprived of any rationality, any restraint, any coherence. It was not just the acceptance, but the exaltation of the absurd and the contradictory, of nonsense and pointlessness taken just as they are. Surrealism took up some similar themes, in part when it refused to adapt life to the derisory conditions of all existence down here. Sometimes the path was in fact followed to the very end, as with the suicide of surrealists like Vacher, Crevel, and Rigaud. The latter reproached the others for being able to do nothing but literature and poetry. Indeed, when the young André Breton declared that the simplest surrealist act would be to go out into the street and shoot passerbys at random, he was anticipating what happened more than once after World War II, when some of the younger generation passed from theory to practice by absurd and destructive actions. They sought to attain the only possible meaning of existence. After rejecting suicide as the radical solution for the metaphysically abandoned individual, with the further traumatization brought about by World War II and with the collapse of a new set of false values, the same current was effectively diffused in characteristic and endemic fashion among a youth that regarded itself as burned out or lost. Its broad margin of inauthenticity, pose, and caricature does not lessen its value as a living sign of the times, now approaching their final nadir. On the one hand, there were the rebels without a cause, the angry young men with their rage and aggression in a world where they felt like strangers, where they saw no sense, no values worth embracing and fighting for. As we have seen, that was the liquidation in the world where God is dead, of those previous forms of revolt that despite everything, and even in utopian anarchism, still had a fundamental belief in a just cause to defend. At the price of any destruction and at the sacrifice of one's own life, nihilism there referred to the negation of the values of the world and of the society against which one was rebelling, not to those of the rebels themselves, but in its current forms, the rebellion is a sheer irrational movement without a flag. Let's stop there because he talked about a lot of things, and I want to go through this paragraph per paragraph. So, first, he talks about only yesterday it was a matter of writers, painters, and damn poets. So he talks about like early modernists like Rimbaud. He gets into Jack London and Ernst Jünger and like adventurers. And that last sentence, I kind of stopped and said, we're going to talk about that a bit because it's very relevant to futurism. I think he's referencing futurism. But while for the others, everything seems in order, safe and sound, as under the banner of science, they hymn the triumphal march of progress, scarcely troubled by the noise of anarchist bombs. Do you think he was referring to the futurists with that?
Maybe.
Triumphal march of progress?
I think progressives in general, like technological and social progressives.
Futurism was very progressive, and Marinetti was like a contemporary of Abelard.
So it might as well be referring to them.
I doubt it was intended for the futurists, but it applies to them.
Yeah. So yeah, then he gets into Dadaism, which we've done a couple Dada episodes. We covered the Dada Manifesto by Tristan Zara, and we did a Francis Picabia special. I'd also recommend checking out my friend James's channel, Cabaret Voltaire, on Telegram. He also does a YouTube channel with like poetry readings and writes poetry himself. But yeah, check out Cabaret Voltaire, and we have a couple episodes on Dadaism. We're planning on doing more because I'm really into Dada. But yeah.
What are you saying now, Kaz?
I would say, as a traditionalist, what do you think about Dada?
I'm not familiar enough with it to have an opinion.
No problem.
Okay, I'm going to reread that paragraph. Already after World War I, processes of this type had begun to spread, announcing the final phases of nihilism. At first, such harbingers remained at the margins of life on the frontier zone of art. The most significant and radical of them all was perhaps Dadaism, the end result of the deepest impulses that had nourished the various movements of avant-garde art. But Dadaism negated the very categories of art, showing the transition to the chaotic forms of a life deprived of any rationality, any restraint, any coherence. It was not just the acceptance, but the exaltation of the absurd and the contradictory, of nonsense and pointlessness taken just as they are. Like I said earlier, Evola in his youth was a Dadaist. Like he has Dada art. He was like the only Dadaist in Italy. So Futurism was a lot more popular and resonated with Italians to a greater extent than Dada did. But Evola was like the one guy who was into Dada, and he kind of trashes it in this paragraph, saying like, as far as the arts go, like it was sheer nihilism, which I would agree with. It is very nihilistic, and very categories of art showing the transit care for like no rationality, no restraint, no coherence. It's kind of like free jazz or something opposed, like applied to poetry and art. It's where collage comes from. I like Hannah Hoke a lot. Like I would disagree. I mean, I kind of agree with his analysis. That is what it is. But yeah, I mean, reality is absurd. I kind of agree with the Dadaists on that. I mean, for context, it's World War I. People are shocked by the horrors of World War I. It's kind of like a protest movement in a certain ways. Like they're trying to make their statement. It was never meant to like last for a really long time. It was meant to last for a few years and then burn out, which it did. It kind of evolved into surrealism, which he gets into in the next paragraph. But I mean, if no one has anything to say about Dadaism, either for or against, if they agree with Evola, what do you got to say?
I mean, the existence of material and time and space is kind of abstract, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck did God came about it? Like, how? If it didn't exist and he had to make it. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm an agnostic, so
I don't know either.
I'm comfortable just saying like I don't know all the mysteries of the universe.
I don't know either. Like, It's part of being Christian that you don't know
Me and
shit.
Luke had long conversations at 4 a.m. about ontology and like figuring out how God made shit.
Yeah,
Actually,
or like
cool.
biogenesis and shit.
Yeah, we probably had like 100 evolution arguments.
Yeah.
What's
So,
up? What's up, Astro Imperio? Good to see you here. What's up, Kami? Kami's got something to say to you, Alkaz.
Yeah, I
Mishima's gay, you fruit.
got like 20 messages from him in my DMs.
Based.
Stop
trying to
coping.
explain to me why Mishima was based and homosexual.
Okay. What are
Wait,
your guys?
hold up. So he likes Mishima though,
Yes.
and he
loves
likes Mishima more because he's gay.
I don't know. I have to
Wait,
ask him.
isn't Kami
That's
gay?
sus. That's kind of gay.
He's a Japanese Mormon gay man.
Yeah, he's actually gay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's not a practicing Mormon, but he was raised
Yeah,
Mormon.
this is not a topic for this.
I mean,
Dude,
What?
just look at Yugo Mishima's smile. Like,
we-
look at him. He's so cute.
Oh,
this
I
is
think
not
you're
like
projecting now.
Outcast. This is not like a regular FF episode.
Okay.
Like, I always drink when we do these, but like it's meant to be more lighthearted, and we're having fun with it too. It's very,
Traditionalism forever, not faggotry forever.
I mean,
Hey,
I
you're the one.
agree.
You're the one defending the faggots. Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, like, shut the
Saying
fuck up.
Mishima wasn't gay.
Doesn't mean I'm gonna lie about Yukio Mishima's sexuality. I think he was obviously a gay man. I think it was frowned upon in Japanese culture at the time, and he was like this celebrated author or writer from Japan. So they saw it as like a national disgrace if he were to be gay. And it's like it would bring shame on the family and shit. Like they were ashamed of it, so they covered it up. So he was presenting a straight, which was very common back then, not just in Japan.
He was probably
Yeah,
bisexual. He probably was like. I don't think he was fully homosexual. I think that it's possible. I don't think there's any evidence to claim that he was fully homosexual. He probably had some like fucking weird bi-curious views because of his like fucked up childhood. But besides that, I mean, like he like I said, he wasn't a practicing, at least to our knowledge, he wasn't a practicing bisexual or homosexual. So
Well, he did have kids.
yeah, so like I think that it's wrong to both say that there's fucking no evidence that he had any homosexual interactions, but I also think it's kind of wrong to just be like, oh yeah, he was a fag.
I'm gonna say there's no
Yeah,
evidence.
homosexual thoughts.
That's a hill. That's a hill I've been willing to die on since like 2016.
Also, you in Confession of a Mask, he kind of fails to love a woman.
This is a fucking
He
fictional
just
book,
can't.
bro. This is a
Can't
fictional
do it.
book, bro. We obviously got off his wife.
Oh, Tim, you fucking retard.
If you write books about like a man's inability to love women and shit, and they're like deeply
That's
rooted in like your own upbringing and like that is very, very suspicious.
Okay, and what's the logical conclusion? He goes out with the woman because they're friends, and then he
doesn't-
talks to
Outcast,
the same
like,
guy
You
who's
have
like
kids,
fucking
not gay.
he
it
gets
doesn't.
eroticized or something.
Outcast. It doesn't take anything away from his quality as a writer, the things he
I know
said.
it's a fact.
Yes, it does.
No.
Not to me. Like I don't
Nice.
really give a shit. He's still an important writer.
Gay as
Oh, yeah,
fuck.
I don't like him.
Who is?
Fact is,
In what way?
Latino bodybuilders for Hellenism is a very gay Twitter account.
Cope and seed.
It's just homoerotic, bro. It's not gay.
Well,
Okay.
no, and that's why I'm in the middle on this. Like, I think Yukio Mishima, there was other reasons to believe he was gay, like the stuff he wrote. If you actually read any of Bap's stuff on homosexuality, he's so critical of it. Like, he's actually more like anti-gay than he is anti-Jewish. So, like he says that the homosexuals that have infiltrated the governments of the West are more of an issue than any like Jewish organization. Like, he doesn't believe in some Jewish cabal; he believes in a homosexual cabal. So, like, he when people like call him out for being gay, it's just like, okay, well, they obviously haven't read any of Bap's like stuff or like listened to his podcasts or his opinions on like the elites. He's very much against he has 2 whole episodes on Caribbean Rhythms about homosexuality, where he talks about it in Greece and how it compares to the Western world and just in general. So like Bap is very anti-homosexual.
Okay. The Mishima episode is in 3 weeks. We're talking about Mishima more than we're talking about Evola. Our young generation is clearly lost.
How about this? No more about Yuki Mishima. We will talk about Mishima on the Mishima episode all day long.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have this conversation again on the Mishima episode, and we're going to have Stembach there to pwn Alcaz on the Mishima wasn't gay thing. So
I'll defend that shit to my fucking death, man. I was on goddamn forums back in 2017, 2015 defending him.
Defending him.
Let
him be who he was.
Defending his honor.
Let this man be a fucking...
well, I'm sure Mishima's parents would appreciate all your keyboard warrior sacrifice
and they won all those lawsuits.
The honor of the Mishima name.
Well, what's his name? Who's the guy that writes all those good Holocaust denial books?
Wait, what?
You guys know who I'm talking about. He's the main guy for Holocaust like denial.
It's been a long time since I've read any of that.
Alcaz, you know who I'm talking about. David Irving. Yeah. He got sued in England, or he sued some chick in England and lost basically. And even though he presented like tons of facts, they just wouldn't give it to him. So just because somebody lost or won a lawsuit kind of doesn't really mean shit in like the modern times.
Okay, so after Dadaism, Evola talks about surrealism, which Dada was an important precursor. It kind of evolved into the surrealist movement after a while. What did you guys think about this quote from Andre Breton? He declared that the simplest surrealist act would be to go out into the street and shoot passerbys at random. Very nihilistic.
I mean, to be fair, it would be very surreal to see somebody shooting passerbys in the street.
Based or cringe?
Yeah, expand on that.
Kind of based.
I said it because if Grady or fucking Luke, if you walked outside and you saw niggas shooting passerbys, it would be very surreal.
Yeah, it would be an interesting experience to say the least.
I think it's like I think that was kind of a satirical statement,
like tongue in cheek a little bit.
Yeah. I think it was true. I doubt he was literally advocating it, but I think he was saying like
the spirit of it was true, but he was also like tongue in cheek
into the street, like manifesting art in reality, like Mayakovsky talks about.
Interesting.
He talks about how like even the anarchists were fighting for like a like something that was moral and like a greater cause, where that's completely gone now. You have like Andre Breton advocating just shooting randos in the street. So like even the anarchists had like more of a moral guideline. What do you think about that? Whereas now we have rebels without a cause, the angry young men with their rage and aggression in a world where they felt like strangers, where they saw no sense, no values worth embracing and fighting for. As we have seen, that was the liquidation in the world where God is dead, of whose previous forms of revolt that despite everything and even in utopian anarchism still had a fundamental belief in a just cause to defend, at the price of any destruction and at the sacrifice of one's own life. Nihilism there referred to the negation of the values of the world and of the society against which one was rebelling, not to those of the rebels themselves, but in its current forms, the rebellion is a sheer irrational movement without a flag. I think the hippies kind of like, they were opposed to war. He's going to get into the hippies and like he wrote this and the beatniks.
I actually just got done studying the hippies in my English class, so I think that actually the hippies was kind of like the opposite of this, just because it was more like taking young men and like dulling them down from like actual experience of life. Like it was so egalitarian that it was the opposite. Like the instincts of young men to fight for something actually isn't, looked like it's not something that the hippie culture took and gave them an opportunity for until like later into the 70s when it started to become more violent. But even then it had become so consumerist and so like mainstream by then that it wasn't really like any sort of revolutionary movement anymore.
Yeah. To like Evola, like he's talking about like because of the death of God, God is dead. He expands on this in other writings. We're just reading one chapter of Ride the Tiger, so it's like he does get into it in other writings, but like what greater cause are we supposed to be fighting for right now? I mean, like religion, like if you're Catholic, like I was raised Catholic, and it's like the church is completely corrupt. Like they're not going to help us in any kind of like rebellious form. They've been like absorbed into the system and they just push the general status quo. Historically, that wasn't always the case. I mean, the church did go hard against liberalism initially and capitalism and like these kind of modernist tendencies, but that's all gone now. I mean, the church doesn't act that way anymore, so I don't think returning to religion or something is really the answer.
Well,
yeah, be a set of Econtist, I suppose. I explored that for a couple of years, but
I think Evola is like, this is a very individualist mindset that he's talking about in this book, and it's more like you embrace the righteous fight in the ways that you can in your life, and you just live according to tradition, and essentially you're just riding that wave. You're riding the tiger instead of trying to subdue the tiger. You're going to jump on its back, and because if you try to fight the tiger, it will just consume you and eat you, and you can't fight it. But if you jump on its back, you can tire it out, essentially.
You got to live up to your own morals, create your own morality, and don't cling too much to society. Or like, is this like, would you describe the Ride the Tiger thing as kind of egoist? Worry about yourself and your own morality.
No, it's egoist for sure.
It is very much. It's not about making your own morality though at all. I would say it's very much not that. It's actually like adhering to a universal concept and like universal like natural order essentially, and you adhere to it. You're not making your own morality is kind of what I'm saying. Like that's more like Nietzschean, whereas like Evola was a traditionalist. He believed in like perennialism and like the natural order.
Okay, how do we like return to these like religions and stuff? Like, if like the institutions are corrupt, even they don't really promote them properly anymore, according to Evola's view. We can't revive paganism. Evola himself, like I know he has pagan imperialism, but he has a later essay against the neo-pagans. She thought like it was just like they're taking the image, but it's a hollowed out version of paganism. It's a look. It's not like there's no substance to it, though.
I would not be a pagan today. Like I'm very sympathetic to paganism, but it's a dead religion. Like Western
bro, pagans are fucking gay nowadays.
Yeah, that's what I just said, nigga.
You can't make them serious. Like they can just fuck themselves. Paganism was
Christians
3,000 years ago, but not today.
Like Christianity is a real like ethical framework, and it has institutions and infrastructure, and like a real, I guess, real books you can base yourself off of. Like
there's a structure to the religion where paganism is literally like, let me read this book that was put together by Christians and like carry around a dagger because I can't die without my sword in my hands. I can go to Valhalla. It's total LARP.
Dagger is made in China, by the way.
Right. The Norse pagan books we have aren't even really religious books. They're just books of stories. Like they're not real. They're not even like the real books like the Bible is. Yeah. Well, the Bible is kind of a book of stories, but not in the same way.
Yeah, it's not like a holy religious text.
It doesn't teach you how to like worship the gods or anything. It's more like moral stories.
Yeah. Evola would argue that he's argued this before that actually, like, because Catholicism and Orthodox Christianity like absorbed a lot of the pagan traditions into like a Abrahamic Christian framework, like it would be a more legit vehicle towards tradition than like
Yeah.
neo-paganism would be, which is just a LARP, basically, according to Evola. He said in Against the Neo-Pagans that he regretted writing Pagan Imperialism also, you know.
Yeah, he said it was just, him being young and
Yeah.
wishful thinking and all that.
Yeah. And like to any Christians watching, I assume we probably have a few. Like, I'm not trying to be offensive with like the church is completely corrupt and all that. Like, I respect believing Christians and all that. I'm not anti-Christian. Like, I just like
Outcast
I said,
is he hates
yeah,
him.
yeah, he's like in the minority. We've got 2 practicing Orthodox and like a lapsed Catholic / agnostic.
I would like to say one thing really quickly. Hellenic paganism does have way more information on it than Germanic paganism. So I do have more. I do respect some Hellenic revivalists. Like there's organizations in Greece and Italy that are reviving Hellenism, and there's a lot more meat to it, I guess, than a Germanic revivalism. Simply because there's more books.
Germans be like ooga booga.
Shout out to Many Dog, by the way. Like the Traditionalism Forever April Fool's Day thing was like his idea a couple months ago. I thought it was a good one. So, yeah, it's too bad he couldn't be here. But shout out to Many Dog. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Yeah, salute. Thanks for listening. So, yeah, should I continue reading or anything else you guys want to talk about? Dada, surrealism. Rebels Without a Cause, the other things he talked about in that like section. I'm going to take that as a no, and I should keep reading. Okay. This trend appeared with the Teddy Boys, with their German analogs, the Halbstarken, and the Generazione della Mezziere, generation of rubble. Their style was one of aggressive protest, expressed through vandalism and lawless actions, valued as pure acts, in cold witness to their otherness. In the Slavic countries, there were the hooligans. More significant was the American counterpart, the hipsters and the Beat Generation. Rather than intellectual attitudes, these were existential positions, lived out by the young, of which a certain type of novel is merely a reflection. Compared to the British types, they were more cold and unadorned, more corrosive in their opposition to everything, pseudo-orderly, rational, and coherent. Everything that was square, meaning solid, justified, and safe. They showed a destructive, voiceless rage, as somebody put it, a contempt for those incomprehensible characters who are capable of being seriously involved with a woman. A job, a cause, Norman Podhoretz. The absurdity of what is considered normal, the organized insanity of the normal world, seemed all the more evident to the hipsters in the climate of industrialization and frenetic activity. Despite all the triumphs of science, was meaningless. Alienation from their surroundings, absolute refusal to collaborate or to have any defined position in society were the rule in this milieu, which did not only include the young and which recruited its members not only from the lower classes but from all social levels, including the wealthy. Some preferred a new form of nomadic existence, others to live at the most elementary level. The methods used by the hipsters to survive, the existential void through strong sensations, including alcohol, sex, Negro jazz, high speed, drugs, and even acts of gratuitous criminality like those suggested in Breton's surrealism. They did not fear experiences of any kind, but sought them out to receive tremendous blows on their own selves. Norman Mailer. The books of Jack Kerouac and the poetry of Allen Ginsberg were inspired in part by this climate. Do we want to talk about the beatniks before I continue reading? Like, what are your guys' thoughts on the beats? Personally, I'm a fan of like William Burroughs. I love Naked Lunch. It's one of my favorite books. I love Jack Kerouac too, On the Road. I think like Ginsberg was a good poet, but he had like really shitty takes on. He was one of the like co-founders of NAMBLA, and I don't support that at all. I disavow as far as that goes.
Oh,
like,
Jesus. I did not. Holy shit.
So from like
Yeah,
an artistic level, on an artistic level, Howl is a great poem, and it really defined the era.
Wait,
Giovanni, I thought you loved Hakeem Bey.
I do like Hakeem Bey. He had similar takes. He was actually friends with William Burroughs, like IRL and shit.
wait, who was it that helped NAMBLA?
Allen Ginsberg,
Founded NAMBLA.
who's a Jewish man and a poet. Yeah, he was a poet. He was a gay man, and he was into man-boy love. He was one of the co-founders of NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, which I disavow. You know, there's nothing like that in Howl.
Jesus
I mean,
Christ.
But
NAMBLA. Yeah, holy shit.
You know the headquarters of NAMBLA is like fucking 30 miles from my house.
Don't dox yourself. But
I think you just did. But
yeah, but there's like different. I think there's different fucking headquarters. Well, maybe I did dox myself, but it's whatever.
Well, at least they have 4 different directions that could be in.
Yeah, but people get stuck on that one detail of Allen Ginsberg, and then like,
well, that's a pretty big fucking detail.
Yeah, but like, they discard the entire movement and act like it had no like relevance. Like, read On the Road, read Naked Lunch, read Junkie, read Queer, even if like you're into that sort of thing. Like, you know, they were edgy for their time. I do want to do an episode like on probably William Burroughs. Maybe
he was Jewish, yes.
Oy vey.
Burroughs wasn't.
Okay.
Only Ginsberg was. Jack Kerouac wasn't Jewish either. He was actually like French Canadian, but he was born in the States.
Okay.
On the Road is a great book. He's just traveling around the country, meeting interesting people, living a wild lifestyle. It's pretty cool. When I was like 17, 18, I loved that book. Like, I don't know if it really like it was big with millennials. Like there was a little bit of a resurgence for Kerouac, at least like in my social circle. But I don't know if I don't really hear like Zoomers talking about Kerouac or William Burroughs at all.
Gio, I'll be real with you. I have no idea who this man is or what these are. I've never heard.
I don't think anybody besides Gio does, but I mean it's a good topic to talk.
Yeah,
about.
I'm not into NAMBLA.
That's like I said, that's one detail about one of the figures. I wouldn't like don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. There was great works made in that era. Lawrence Ferlinghetti, like he was an epic. He wrote an epic poem called "Her." I like that a lot. There's a lot of value in it, and it's American. It's not like European.
Okay, this makes kind of sense.
Still, like, yeah, if you're not familiar with these guys, like, you should check some of them out. I wouldn't recommend Ginsberg because of already mentioned, but Kerouac is great.
Hey, Rodden's trying to join Gio. You should let him in. He's
William
mad,
Burroughs is great. I'm not seeing anyone trying to get in, like in the invite bar.
He wants to. He has a point of contention.
Should I like? I'll DM him the invite link and we'll try and get Ronan on. Yeah, can you forward it to him for me? Like,
I did.
Okay. Yeah, read On the Road by Jack Kerouac. The Dharma Bums is also great. Great writer.
Yeah, a lot of them were into like Eastern philosophy, like Allen Ginsberg was, and so is all the beatniks, like the hippie movement, which I like. You know, I'm also influenced by Eastern philosophy, and so is Evola. I think it's a interesting avenue they went.
Yeah, but they went like.
Okay, so far, I do think like this does act as like a good precursor to like 20th century youth culture or whatever. He covers like the surrealists, the Dadaists, gets into the beats, the hippies. Like I kind of consider all these movements to be kind of proto-punk in a certain way. And there hasn't been like any meaningful youth subculture since the punks, which is why I talk about punk as often as I do, because like, you know, There's the hip hop generation, but that's kind of like racialized. It stopped being so in like the 90s, like when Eminem blew up. But you know, if you're like a white kid from the suburbs, when I was growing up, I was kind of a weirdo, but like you weren't supposed to listen to hip hop. Like, so I don't
Oh,
know
that,
where I'm going with that, but it's like obviously it cuts off at 72, so he doesn't, or like whenever this book was written, I think it was early 70s or late 60s. But so like punk hasn't happened yet. He doesn't talk about that. He doesn't talk about hip hop. He doesn't like jazz, so I assume he wouldn't like hip hop either.
I don't like jazz.
You would see punk as very nihilistic, which it
Weird
was.
jazz singer.
But
Huh?
Jazz, Moondog.
Moondog, yeah, Moondog's cool. I like Moondog. I like Sun Ra. I love jazz music in general. Like I always have.
I'm actually not a
Moondog-
fan of jazz music at all.
I don't actually
I don't even care about jazz, to be honest.
Melantip, you need to expand your horizons, young man.
Well, I'm doing that with Vaporwave, so
You just listen to
For
video. You just listen to video game music, dude.
no,
Develop an actual taste in music. Like
I listen
Expand
to
that palette.
our young generation is clearly. Evelo was right, man.
Before that, military music, man.
Yeah, and like
Oh, yeah,
historical
Alcaz is always
military
sending me that
marching
shit.
music. Like,
Alcaz always sending me that shit. Like all that dude listens to is fucking military marching music.
Based.
anyway, Ronan's here. Thanks for joining us, man. You wanted to
Oh, shit.
interject at something pertaining to the beats?
Howdy, gentlemen. First of all, and second of all, no, I was just in the backstage, just schizophrenically and autistically screeching about LePay Gang thing. I understand. We're like a whole chapter later. I'm very sorry. I'm just gonna give a quick rebuttal here. Is that
it is a very Christian heavy or Christian sympathetic heavy panel. I didn't plan it that way. I never know who's going to show up.
Oh no, I don't
Yeah.
really give a fuck. I mean, it's fine. You know.
Okay.
So I think the interesting thing, I guess, I wanted to bring up. People talk about Christian revisionism, for instance, of the Germanic Eddas, and the fact that they didn't really have a written tradition. They had more of an oral tradition, and I understand that. But the thing that people don't get is that, for instance, in the Middle Ages, the Albigensian Crusade and all this kind of stuff, and I'm sure it's not the first time you guys have heard it, but there are a lot of Christian denominations that were actually just secretly pagan or pagan in substance. And I mean,
Gnostics a lot.
and if you don't understand how that works, like for instance, in our time, the most, I guess, how do you say, illustrated way you can do it is if you go down in Mexico, they kind of mix in a lot of like these ex-slave religions with local Aztec gods with Christianity. So, for instance, Queen Guadalupe is not necessarily like the like Mary, Mother of God, that we think of it. A lot of the substantive things of what they believe, which is like folk Christianity, is substantively Christian. Substantively pagan, or rather, whatever their polity is. And a lot of the same thing happened in Europe and continued to happen. And frankly, a lot of the fault line between, in the 30 Years' War with, Protestants against Catholics, etc. It's not just about the substance of, like, for instance, the abuse of the church or whatever, or the substance of the Bible. Mostly it had to do and fell along the lines of, coincidentally, like the religious breakdown of like pagan, rather like, the Hellenics versus the Celts versus so-and-so. And you can see that, and that's part of the reason why, like, for instance, people like Carl Jung talk about like the influence these religions had on, such and such peoples, and why they weren't really truly like Christians. The few people that were actually just either the people in the monasteries or the slaves, right? Because they had no traditions of their own. They had no identity of their own. So they were completely part of this new Christian paradigm, but the majority of people weren't. I just wanted to interject there, and I really do apologize, but that
No. It's fine. We have spots open on the panel, so your input is definitely valued, and yeah, welcome to the stream.
I feel so cherished. Thank you.
I wanted to bring that up because I talk with Alcaz about that all the time. I always talk about how actually I believe the Gnostic sects, like the Cathars, were more pagan. There are pagans who used aspects of Christianity, really, and he doesn't agree with me on that. But I think that is, if you look at the views of the Gnostics, it's not very Christian at all. It's a heavily pagan influence when they use some of the names in the Bible, and that's about it.
I think the Cathars are more pagan than Christian for sure. I'm just not sold on like Gnosticism in general.
Okay. Any rebuttal from the Christians?
I don't know what the fuck Ronan was talking about. Not gonna lie.
Oh, I mean, my
Or
only
why he
rebuttal
was
would be
very
that
angry about
my only.
Christians.
Oh, sorry. You
I
go.
really don't get it.
My only rebuttal would just to be that like I don't agree with the view that wasn't Christian. Like I think that you can have pagan influence culturally and societally, and it still be entirely Christian. Like it obviously took European aspects, but it's still at root the main view of Christianity is that Christ died on the cross. I believe that most Europeans believed that, and that is fundamentally what made them Christian.
What do you mean, Melon Tip? What's your like?
Yeah, like I just was wondering why he was so angry and why he just came out to defend pagans. I don't get it.
Well, I mean, I feel like aside from necessity to defend my co-religionists, I think as someone that is interested in like I guess the truth, I think it's important to actually talk about it, especially I mean, especially if we're just here. But it's not angry necessarily. Like I said, I don't have
It's passionate.
Christian. I would say it's passionate. Thank you. But I guess my point is like as much as people say that the Christians like revised the Eddas, I think my point was that it was actually in some substantive and value oriented way. A lot of the time, it was the I guess pagans that revised Catholicism. If that makes
That's an
sense.
interesting. That's an interesting way to put that.
Yeah, like and don't get me wrong, I was just joking. I'm not actually autistically screeching, but I just feel like I just feel like it's important to at least have a good devil's advocate here. I feel like if one side was lagging,
We welcome all viewpoints and on Futurism Forever. So like I was saying at the beginning, we're not dogmatic or like super rigid. As like a group. I use that term loosely. We're more like a union of egoists. So like people are allowed to have like come from different walks of life or like practice different religions. They can be atheists, they could be Christian, they could be pagan. Right. We give a platform to anyone who doesn't annoy me pretty much. and Ronan is a cool guy. So
I appreciate it. And like I said, to reiterate, maybe my favorite people, they say the Jews have this saying is like the 10th man has to, by, what's it called? By duty, he has to be contrarian just because if, everyone's thinking the same, no one's thinking or someone's not thinking. So I figure it was my addition. But I would like to add this, is that the Gnostic futurists, I think aesthetically and like, for instance, the way that they wrote and like the liturgy they talked about, I think in a fundamental way that like belonged beyond, I guess maybe beyond what they kind of maybe even conceived of themselves. But it's kind of cool that like, for instance, there's a book of Thomas that was found in Egypt recently. And I guess it was written in the 300s, but it talks about like the way it talks about the liturgy or like the sacrament, whatever the Christians talk about, it talks about it in a kind of transcendental movement oriented. And like, for instance, like he who drinks from my mouth shall be nourished from the mouth of truth or the like spout of truth, like they alleged that Jesus said that. But like just in the way that they wrote was honestly in and of itself an artistic innovation that kind of has like a futuristic like value. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Okay.
CSD joined us too. What's up, man?
Oh, nothing much. What about y'all?
Just reading some Evola, shooting the shit, having fun on
eating some pizza.
April Fool's Day, being based in Trad Pills, returning to tradition right now on live stream.
Good. I'm glad I finally converted you, Gio.
Yeah, I said it right up front. I'm not actually keeping character. Like, we're just gonna read a traditionalist text because we never have before, and it's like talking about a lot of the things we have covered. Like in this chapter, at least, he talks about Dadaism, he talks about surrealism, he talks about the beats we haven't covered yet, but I do want to cover because I like the Beat Generation a lot. Ginsberg aside, he was a good poet, but he was a deplorable man.
Yeah, like Sartre.
Oh, come on, Giovanni. Just because fucking. Just because he found Nambla.
I like Hakeem Bey too, and he said
Watch.
nice things about Fume.
Outcast is going to be like, just because he supported NAMBLA, we don't know he was a pedophile.
There's no proof. They're
his
actually
family sued. His family sued.
They're actually
said he wasn't
proof,
a pedophile.
man. Like I read his biography, I Celebrate Myself, and he was into that shit.
Yeah, he's very open about being a pedophile. Like he would tell people if they asked.
Yeah.
It was not.
How did nobody fucking shoot that guy?
I mean, he lived in
fucking
San Francisco, man. Like,
oh, that's why.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's such a shithole city, dude. I was there not that long ago. It's
what
sad.
California does to a motherfucker.
Yeah.
CSD. We told people about your story at the beginning of the podcast, but do you want to what were your inspirations? Were you watching Disney films or?
It's everything that Artemio says is like a fucking inspiration to me.
Yeah, the dude is a comedic genius. That kid's going places, man.
What?
Yes, I'm being for real when I say this. Half of that was inspired by real life events. I am being serious. The part where I mentioned Haz is literally something that happened. Besides the whole buck breaking and him getting on his knees and shit.
What the fuck?
That was a widely circulated video clip. That night that Haz and the other Carl debated, the other Carl was kind of in our inner circle at that point in time, and he was a regular on our podcast. He debated Haz. It was a total shit show. It was a shouting match. It wasn't a real debate. But afterwards, Haz is saying yo, I debated all of you on your platform. Which one of you has the balls to come to my platform and debate me in my circle? So Artemio shows up, and the clip was everyone's seen this. It was Haz saying what you gonna say, little bitch? What you gonna say, little bitch? What you gonna say, little bitch? And then he drops the N-bomb, and then Haz goes back, what you gonna say, little bitch? What you gonna say, little bitch? Yeah, I mean, not that I condone in using those kind of words. I refrain from using them myself, but Artemio was. I'm not going to repeat it because it's could get me a strike. But the N-word. But Artemio was a free spirit. I can't control that fucking kid. So.
You mean schizophrenic? I mean, I love the guy. He's funny. He's funny.
Yeah, he might have a little bit of that going on too.
I hope it's going to be the next king of Israel.
Right. Should I get back to the text or?
I have something to say about the text.
Okay, go ahead.
About the part about also recruiting the rich kids. Yeah, fuck the rich kids. Don't recruit them. Just leave them alone.
I don't know, man. I think we need to get our Thiel bucks.
Yeah. Without the rich kid, who are you gonna bum alcohol?
I mean, I'm working class, but I can tell you right now, a lot of working class people are basically apolitical. They don't give a fuck. They just want to watch football and drink beer and go to the sports bar, try and fuck bitches.
Yeah.
That's what they talk about on lunch break. They're not talking about working class struggles and shit like that.
Well, that's what I was trying to tell these Strasserist guys. It's every guy I meet that's a hardcore, right winger, but it's super socialistic. Is they're never working class guys. And it's I'm sorry, the working class guys do not give a shit. They vote for more capitalism. So you're not gonna win them over.
I mean, some of them do. I think a lot of just focus on people who are anti-system, who are genuinely revolutionary. They could come from any kind of background.
I think Caleb Maupin had a good point to this when he was talking about this. I know he's a Marxist and all that, but he said that most of the times when the working class actually gets involved with radical politics, it's because like the situation has gone so bad, so they had no other choice, and so they turn to stuff like this.
Yeah,
So
they're structurally changed. I mean, that's the thing you should see. Like, for instance, in the French Revolution and every revolution since, they all come from the middle class. Like Robespierre and the majority of revolutionaries and ideologues are middle class people, like lawyers and merchants and like petit bourgeois kind of people, lumpen proles or pros. Like, I don't know about you, but I've worked I've worked construction before, and that shit, you don't feel like you have brain power to, do what we do,
not at all.
at the
Not
end
at
of
all,
the day, so that's what I say,
Yeah, because I have done construction before, and like, yeah, you even try to bring up anything political to those guys, and they're like, yeah, I vote for Trump anyways, like where the beer's at. So, like, they don't give a shit, and you're not going to win them over with some economic arguments either. They're just going to call you a communist, and they're going to think that you want to make their daughters like.
The vast majority of Bolshevik soldiers probably never had read the Communist Manifesto. That more likely what swayed them was they're saying peace, land, and bread.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in the Marxian sense, most proletariats are lumpen prole. Like, they're not like class really conscious aside from a basic like sense of Nietzschean resentment, some rich people just for them being rich and them being poor. Like, I get the sentiment, but like that's the only animating thing. It's, I hate the guy that's better than me. I don't really I just go to work. It's like Garfield Mondays, you know what I mean?
Even Murray Bookchin, who was like an anarchist, said, like, I think it was in the 80s, he said, like, yeah, the working class struggle is dead. Like, we need to focus. We need people who are like teachers. We need people who are in government. We need people who are in positions of influence. We need workers too, but it's like, we need people from all over the place. Everybody brings something to the table. Focus on worldview and people who have similar goals to you. They could come from any background, and I wouldn't like reject someone just because they have like come from money or something. Like, they could have
the opposite
to offer to the movement. Yeah,
I think the money. We need more money in the right.
Yeah,
Like,
all
the right
hands
doesn't
on,
have enough
all
money.
hands on deck. Like,
I still hate the rich kids. Mainly
me,
because
me too, because I'm working class and
You just watch too many 1980s fucking bully high school movies and think that all rich kids are like douchebags.
Yeah, you don't have to be friends with everybody in the struggle, though.
I'm like reading this one book about the Chinese cultural revolution, and there was like a program of like sending the rich kids to the farmers.
Gay. Fuck China. Maoism is gay.
Wait a second,
Colin, you fucking love Outcast. You fucking love China, you liar.
He's just being contrarian. Don't worry.
Nigga, what the fuck are you talking about? I hate China.
Well, you literally said that fucking Bronze Age mindset criticizes China too much.
No, you're thinking no. What the fuck are you talking about?
No,
dude, we had a whole argument about this.
No, nigga, I agree with that. I like that about Baptist.
You said he was too critical of Chinese society being bug life.
Ancient Chinese society, not fucking modern one.
No, yeah, ancient Chinese society too.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Maoism.
well, I like China.
I just want to tell the CCP I love them a lot, and I hope to get some of their money one day.
Yeah, 10,000
Please
social
don't
credits.
defund me.
Give.
If you're watching this, please give
Please don't take away my social credit, please. I denounce Outcast.
I think it's important that I step in here because Gio is a cool guy, but I think it's important that we reiterate that like Traditionalism Forever is just an art show. It's not like associated with one ring or another. It's just about art. Second of all, like, we can't be using words, man. Outcast, you're gonna fuck over Gio with his
what'd he say?
channel. Just saying.
What'd he say?
He casually drops the N bomb with an A, mind you, not with the hard R.
You can get away with that, I think.
Okay, what's the difference with the N word with the A or the ER?
One is like quote unquote endearment, and one is like you're from the South.
Okay.
Personally, I do give him shit for that. Like, his voice isn't street enough to like be convincing with it. Like, I tell him he sounds ridiculous when he says it. But
I think it's kind of funny.
He does it anyway. I'm not an authority figure. I just organize things here.
Hey, let a nigga be.
just let's not fuck over our friend here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Try and refrain. Don't say anything that's actually hateful. I like discourage it, but if it pops out, I'm not gonna like
Yeah,
chew his
No,
head
that's
off or anything. I get it. Like we all have these speech things that we just do. Like I don't know. I say based in front of my parents now and shit. They have no idea what I'm talking about. Just because like I say it all the time online, and it's just like part of my vernacular now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I say
I-
base to people, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah, I say
Yeah.
based and cringe to my parents, and they have no fucking idea.
Bro, I'm saying racial slurs in front of my dad, and he's completely fine with it.
You're Serbian,
Bro.
bro.
Yeah,
Bro, the first episode you came on, you dropped an M-bomb. I remember that.
Of course, when I drop too many N-word.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
try and
luckily-
refrain. Like I don't use
Well,
the word.
well,
Yeah,
to be fair
let's
here,
say,
Mount Tip is a turf.
let's turn the
so-
page. How about we get back to the matter at hand here?
Yeah,
Right? Let's not
let's
pull a
get-
Joe Rogan.
Let's get back to the text before I get too drunk to fucking finish. Okay. But it had already been announced by some authors who were rightly called the Walt Whitmans, not of the optimistic and hopeful world of the young American democracy, but of a world in collapse. Beside Dos Passos and others of the same group, the early Henry Miller may be called the spiritual father of the currents under discussion. It has been said of him that he is more than a writer or an artist, a kind of collective phenomenon of his epoch, an incarnate and vociferous phenomenon, a raw manifestation of the anguish, the furious despair, and the infinite horror extending behind the crumbling facade. It is the sense of a tabula rasa, the cosmic silence, the void, the end of a whole epoch, and a prophet who proclaims the end of a world at the very moment when it is flowering and radiating, at the apogee of its grandeur and its pestilential contagion. Miller himself wrote these characteristic words. From the beginning, it was never anything but chaos. It was a fluid which enveloped me, which I breathed in through the gills. A stone forest, the center of which was chaos, is the sensation of the ambience in which today's man moves. Sometimes in the dead center, in that very heart of chaos, I danced or drank myself silly, or I made love, or I befriended someone, or I planned a new life. But it was all chaos, all stone, and all hopeless and bewildering. A partly convergent testimony from another direction is that which Hermann Hesse puts into the mouth of one of his characters. I'd rather feel burned by a diabolic pain than to live in these sanely temperate surroundings. A wild desire flares up in me for intense emotions, sensations, a rage against this whole toneless, flat, normal, sterilized life, and a wish to destroy something, perhaps a warehouse, a cathedral, or myself, and to commit outrageous follies. This, in fact, is what I have always most hated, abhorred, and cursed. This satisfaction, this complacent healthiness, this plump bourgeois optimism, this life of the mediocre, normal, common man. Paul van den Bosch, in his Les Enfants de l'Absurde, wrote, "We are the ghosts of a war that we have not fought. Having opened our eyes on a disenchanted world, we are more than any others the children of the absurd. On certain days, the senselessness of the world weighs on us like a deformity. It seems to us that God has died of old age, and we exist without a goal. We are not embittered. We start from zero. We were born among the ruins. When we were born, the gold was already transmuted into lead. The heritage of the precursors of European nihilism has largely been translated in these movements of ruined youth into the crude forms of life as it is lived. An important trait here is the absence of any social revolutionary motive and the belief that no organized action can change things. That is the difference from the left-wing intellectuals who condemn bourgeois society and from the nihilists of the past. Work, read, prepare in groups, believe, then have your back broken. No thanks, that's not for me, says one of Kerouac's characters. This is the end result at which the revolution of the left has practically arrived after its triumph, after passing the phase of simple revolt. Camus made it quite plain after the period of his communist illusions. The revolution has betrayed its origins with the constitution of new yokes and a new conformism, more obtuse and absurd than ever. It is not necessary to dwell any further on these testimonies of a traumatized existence. nor on those whom one might call the martyrs of modern progress. As I have said, all that interests us here is their value as symptomatic indices of the time. The forms mentioned here have also degenerated into extravagant and ephemeral fashions, but there is no denying the causal and necessary connection that unites them to the world where God is dead, and no substitute is yet being found for him. When these forms pass, others of the same type will certainly crop up, according to circumstances, until the present cycle is exhausted. So that's the end of chapter 4. What did you guys think about all that? Any thoughts?
I think in simple terms, I think Evola is kind of bored with the world.
Yeah. I kind of like his concept of ride the tiger. I've reached a similar conclusion myself, to be honest.
It's very Nietzsche, and like, let's not be fucking bourgeoisie pencil pushers. Let's be warriors and poets. Very D'Annunzio, kind of what D'Annunzio did when he made Fume.
I'm kind of sympathetic to a lot of these figures who he's talking about also, though. Like, I'm not going in the same direction as him. I'm heading in the opposite direction. I don't really agree with a lot of his criticisms of Dada. Well, I think it's an accurate framing of Dadaism and surrealism, but like, I like those movements. I think the figures involved were righteous people. I think it was an honest. He talks about Camus. He talks about one of Kerouac's characters. I liked that quote he used. Where is it? Give me a second here. I can't fucking find it, but I did like that quote. Sorry, I've been drinking. Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about like some of the figures he's talking about? Are you sympathetic, or do you think he's right? They're lost.
I think that what happened was, like, it sounds like he's doing a proto Fight Club type thing, and in fact,
Yeah.
I think a lot of his like what he's talking about, I think speaks true to us now. Is this idea of a tiredness with being safe, a tiredness of, you know, like living like a rat or a squirrel, where it's, you know, the middle class life is okay. You don't do anything bad. You go to work, you get your nuts, and then you come back and you still do that again and again and again.
And you pay
you never
taxes.
live a life, you know. And he's talking about doing art with a hammer, like Nietzsche said. Bakunin, I guess you could say he's an anarch, right? But he did art with a bomb. And like, I think that's what Evola is trying to get at, but he's coming from, I guess, a traditionalist perspective as opposed to an anarchist one.
Yeah, he says they showed a destructive, voiceless rage. It does remind me of that quote from Fight Club, and I bring this up all the time. It's one of my favorite quotes from the movie and the book. But like, we have no Great War. We have no Great Depression. Our war is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives. And it seems kind of nihilistic, like they're just lashing out aimlessly at the society they find themselves in. But I think there's like something righteous about that, because I don't know, the world does rub me. The society I find myself in does rub me as fake and gay, and I do kind of despise it. There are good people in it. They mean well, but it's like,
no, I think it's incredibly life affirming. I think that's
Yeah.
the difference, is that it reveals something in us, in all of us, like in our human nature, is that we weren't born like squirrels or rats or prairie dogs or something like that. We're born to be lions and wolves and etc. And so, like, that's the thing, is we're not okay with just living with like material goods. That's not something that fulfills you. That's a means to fulfillment, right? And so bourgeois life doesn't get the type of soul that is sated with material goods dies, you know, by its own hand, really. Like, you see, like, all the boomers are the classic example of having everything and losing everything. They're so rich. I mean, I guess to say it, they're so poor that was money, you know?
yeah, it's been kind of like a recurring theme on the podcast. Like, we talked about it in Fight Club. We talked about it in Armed Joy. We talked about it in The Black Mask, Bonneau Gang, and Futurism. Like, it comes up again and again and again. I think it's the the struggle of our age. Like, you know, we have like more material wealth than ever. You know, we have all these modern technologies that are supposed to make our lives easier and all this, but like, I don't know. Our lives have become empty and meaningless. We're just consumers. I don't think like technology and stuff is to blame. I think it's the framework that we live in. It's liberalism. It's capitalism. You know, it
It's
makes
how we use. It's how we use technology.
yeah, it's life denying as opposed to life affirming. And you know, our only value is like our ability to produce capital, and like the quality of our lives doesn't matter if we're happy or not. Doesn't matter if like we're living fulfilling lives that, you know, we can enjoy and be proud of, or if we're just doing demeaning labor for shit wages and living in shitty neighborhoods and eating shit food. And you know, more and more people are living alone all the time. You know, we're not forming families anymore. People don't know their neighbors. We have no communities. And
You
yeah.
got to embrace that Bronze Age mindset.
I have still have not read that book, so I don't talk in those terms. But yeah, that's like my rant of the night, and those are kind of like my concluding thoughts. I'm kind of sympathetic to a lot of the people who he's talking about in this chapter, and you can listen to our episodes on a lot of these people. But yeah, I'm heading in the opposite direction. I do want modern technology. He's not really a Luddite. He doesn't really get into that. But yeah, I think as far as traditionalism goes, like these things might have worked in their time and day, but it's like when something's dead, you can't bring it back to life and revive it in an authentic way. You know, you can wear the costumes or whatever, but it's not authentic. It's not legitimate. You know,
Well,
we
I
got to
think-
move forward.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
what Evola is saying, though, or even most traditionalists are saying, for that matter, though.
Yeah, Evola actually talks about a lot of things that you can't go back to, and like the chains of tradition are cut on them. So he just still viewed that when he talks about tradition, it's like a world order, and it's just the truth of the world. So like you can't reject tradition just because you don't have a connection to it anymore. Like it's still the truth, it's still the universal order. You have to find it in your own life, and then live your own life how you can in the modern world. Like you can't just reject it in like the sense that Nietzsche did, and you know, make your own morals, because at the end of the day, if you make your own morals, they're not worth anything.
As 21st century Western people, what are the traditions we're supposed to be holding on to, or trying to conserve or preserve or resurrect? Or
Well,
what
Evola
have
had
you?
this idea of like the Olympian tradition, and it was like the warrior ethos of like the Aryan spirit and, you know, the Aryan people. So that's definitely one example of like traditional views of life. And I think just embracing, like, for example, you don't have to necessarily be like pagan or try to be like LARP as Catholic because, you know, you like the Renaissance or the conquistadors. But I think you have to take the way that they viewed life and the main like principles that they held in high regard and live your life to the same standards. That's my view of what tradition is like.
That like warrior culture is definitely present in futurism, though.
Yeah.
Can I
you
interject here?
don't need to be a traditionalist. Yeah, go ahead.
So I agree with you, Gio. I think that technology in and of itself is not evil, right? But here's the contention that I have with some people that are like called trads, is that perennial values, they're substantive, right? They're things that are like you know, they're not dependent on the outside, right? And so I think that's the issue that people find, is that yeah, traditionalism isn't like literally wearing a 17th century, I don't know, freaking, you know, Rousseau like or whatever, like wearing a top hat or something. That's superficial. I think really I could go around like a liberal with a dildo on my forehead and still be a traditionalist, because in substance I am that thing. So it's like, and you asked me, where does this manna come from? Where does this teaching come from? Well, what is tradition if not wisdom? It's just a heuristic, right? So yes, it's something that you can try in part to recover, but it's something that you live through as well. As we are like living through this era right now of like this kind of emotional or like spiritual vapidity, We are gathering wisdom as it speaks. It's an organic process. Is the view of an organic life. That's really what it means at base. And so I don't think like futurism is at all at odds with I guess perennialism, if that makes sense. The aesthetics, you can have any aesthetics, but the idea is the inborn wisdom. Like the temples, all the gods and goddesses are within yourself. They're never lost. Just, they're to go to a physical place to feel spirituality, and they feel lost if that's taken down. But that's the difference, is like you can burn a church and feel like, for instance, like the Catholic Church, you can burn a church and feel like it's lost, or you can burn the text and feel like it's lost. And then you can be a pagan and you can feel inside and who you are just by what you are. This is like a Carl Jung thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's just my 2 cents on it.
I would agree with most of that. I think like a lot of the characteristics of traditional societies or like eras from the past that people like are not really incompatible with futurism. It's just we can't go back to those. We can't revive them. Like we need to be moving forward and creating new traditions that have meaning to us in the here and now. Not clinging to things that are no longer working for us, or trying to revive things that like most people do not relate to at all. And like we talked about paganism earlier, that like you can't practice those ancient religions authentically anymore, in my opinion. Like it's like you don't know that much about them. Like you're taking what you do know and filling in the missing pieces with like new age mumbo jumbo, and I think it's kind of retarded, to be frank. But
you don't want my crystals, bro? I have crystals and magnets, man. I'm telling you.
Pass on
This reminds me of like archaeofuturism. That what was his name?
William
The French
S.
guy.
Guillaume Fay? No, Guillaume
it's
Fay.
Guillaume Fay, yeah.
My problem with him is he is promoting like pagan revivalism. And, and also like pan-Europeanism doesn't sit well with me. I just don't think in those terms.
Is based. Fuck you.
Pan-Europeanism is gay. Like obviously the crowd thinks it's fucking based. Like fuck that shit.
Oh, I love the Russians.
That's Eurasianism.
Oh,
yeah, that's Eurasianism.
Yeah,
I love Russia. All right.
I wouldn't be opposed to something like a Mediterranean Union, where all the countries bordering on the Mediterranean form.
You guys would never get anything done. You guys would just have that Mediterranean work ethic and be fucking smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee all day.
No, man, we would flex. We would flex on Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and control the fucking globe.
Every single Mediterranean country is in debt to the fucking Germany, man.
Yeah, because Germany are exploitative faggots, and fuck the
Don't
EU.
take fucking debts if you're not gonna pay them, man.
Fuck that,
dude. That's the med culture, bro. Why, Chris? It's a sin. It's a sin.
Work for it when we can get gifts.
Hey, I just think it's interesting that
It's a
the
Mediterranean tradition, Outcast. Stop being prejudiced, God.
I just think it's interesting that the Meds all worship blonde hair, blue-eyed people. Just my 2 cents on that.
There is no.
Jesus has blue eyes.
Oh, by the way,
I
didn't say Jesus had blue eyes.
Wait,
I'm getting a drink. I'll be back. Talk amongst yourselves.
Who said I said Jesus had blue eyes?
No, I said Jesus did have blue eyes.
Yo, no, for real though. Like, hold on. I would say America, in and of itself, is like an apotheosis of all the like European traditions. Like, if you look at every great American, whether it's a Germanic, a Slav, like for instance, like Nikola Tesla, or freaking, Latins as well. Like even Christopher Columbus, the Americas are literally named after, Vespucci. So Amerigo Vespucci. And so you guys got to have to understand that it's a synthesis of all three elements. And like, I mean, I know people don't like that. I get it. I understand. But I think we're supposed to have taken the best elements of each and made them into something better. But I think that's the crux of the argument, is that half of America is like all the worst elements, and like a very small part of America is the best,
Yeah.
I mean, that's my take. What do you think, Melon Tip? What do you think of Americans?
I wish a nuclear holocaust on America.
Oh, shit.
With,
Dude, then I'm gonna get caught in the blast. What the hell?
Total annihilation.
with the power of Allah, I will annihilate America. Inshallah, inshallah, inshallah.
Which is funny, you know. If you guys, I don't know, I was in the military and I was like reading a lot about just like Islamic insurgencies, and I think it's true. Like Bat talked about this specifically, but he talked about how like ISIS and all these like crazy like terrorist organizations, they're like the most modernists. Like fundamental, like Wahhabism is not traditional at all.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I
Like
like,
it's also very Puritan in a way too. Like,
yes,
Also,
exactly.
it's controlled by the U.S. government as a puppet.
Yeah, well, there's that
Yeah,
aspect too.
straight from
Yeah.
Tel Aviv. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, Wahhabism was entirely, a Western invention.
Yeah.
What Pan-Arabianism too?
what?
Like Pan-Arabianism, wasn't it? Too
No, Pan-Arabism was the exact opposite.
Yeah, why the fuck would Pan-Arabism be funded by Jews? It literally wants to take Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the most staunchest anti-Israel groups are Pan-Arab.
Yeah.
Like the PFLP.
I think people
the
simp too much over the Pan Arabs, though. Like, I don't think there's gonna be any
It
solution
is a
to
dying
the Pan
movement.
Arabs.
I will say that it's way past its prime.
Well, even if it wasn't, dude, like I do not trust the fucking Arabs to bring about a higher civilization. Like Pan-Arabism being against Jews literally does nothing for me.
Well, I can understand why a lot of nationalists liked it, especially during the Cold War, because then it would actually kind of like there'd be like a third great power between like America, the Soviet Union, and this Pan-Arab state. So I can understand why.
Then we just had like 3 shitty fucking world powers still.
Well, again, if we look at like Pan-Arabism, it's also a lot closer to what a lot of these European nationalists were advocating for too.
Yeah, well, but the problem is that they're Arab. So.
It
kind of just kills it for me.
Do you have a problem with Arabs, man? You got a problem?
Well, I think Arabs are not going to lead us to anything great in the world.
Are you saying Assad must go? You know who must go if you say Assad must go.
I like Assad, but
That's
he's
right.
not the answer to anything.
Okay,
He's
well,
the answer to Syria.
Yeah, he's a resistance, but like he's not somebody who it's like, oh, my Pan-Aryan like Arabism, like this is gonna save the world. Like, no, it's not. It's just gonna prevent the world from being one third world shithole to be a Pan-Arab third world shithole.
But
with some slightly better
I
based
will
takes.
say this though: the religious sectarianism that's taken Pan-Arab's place has not been any better. In fact, it's worse.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, the thing is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they're like based Arabs; they're still Arabs, so it doesn't do anything for me.
But they're my Arabs.
Cool. Fucking Americans being always racist and that shit. That's all my Arabs bros on Twitter.
no, I think the enemy is wherever spiritual death is, and I think like I would wish well like any people that like throws off like whatever the fuck is like player time. I don't even know what you would call it, but like it would be better if the Arabs were Ba'athist. It would be better. It would be better if they were that, as opposed to like whatever the fuck America has become. I don't even know what it is. Like people they can't even describe it because wokeism doesn't encapsulate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like
just the Arabs being Ba'athist like doesn't do anything for me. Like I don't give a shit.
I don't care if it gets your jimmies off, but the thing is, you have to understand is that we don't live in a vacuum, and when our surrounding states become a certain thing, the cultural influence on us is like.
But I also think that it's a bad gamble to think that like they would be pro Europe and like create nationalism on the
well,
rise in
they
Europe.
wouldn't, but at least they would deny a rear ground. Like
Yeah,
the white
they
people,
would.
for instance,
That's like
don't-
saying we should let like the non-white hordes come in because they want to kill the Jews or something like that.
No,
Like
that's not at all what I'm saying. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, for instance, the Kurds, that they're YPG, they're communists, right?
Mhm.
I'd rather the Ba'athists win than the Kurds. Why? Because when the Kurds win, guess what happens is one more like set of peoples that believes in something, like the same thing, the same sickness. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. Supporting the Arabs just means that we're denying liberal power in the area and harming liberalism wherever it goes. Like
Boom.
if they lose in the Middle East, that means they're a little more closer to like falling apart.
Exactly. That's what it's CSD. That exactly my freaking
Okay.
alliance.
So it's like supporting Russia in
yeah, it's
Ukraine
alliance
kind
of
of
convenience,
situation.
not of ideology. It's alliance of convenience. And
Okay.
frankly, like I define myself mainly against like destroying this evil. What comes after, man? Like honestly, we can't put together what it is, frankly. But we can't start unless this thing is out of the way. And I think that's what people are starting to realize is like all the petty divert the future like doesn't matter until we like defeat the big enemy. You know.
Yeah.
Well, my kind of stance is that if the revival of European classical man doesn't happen, I don't care. Like the rest of the world can burn. If we're done, then I don't care about the rest of the world. That's kind of my stance.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying is a precondition that can't happen unless liberalism dies.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to care about like denying it everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a reason why, for instance, in World War II, the Germans had Iraq backed the fascists in Iraq, which is the Baathists. Sorry, the Baathists in Iraq. Like, there's a reason why. You know, you take
it was a geopolitical move.
Yeah, it matters, and frankly, like, I'm not trying to save anyone, but like, I would hate to see any kind of ugliness in the world, even if it's ugliness from another people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, like, dude, what China has become is true. I really get scared when people in America, even in right wing, are like, "Wow, they're so base." It's like, dude, you really want a camera up your ass?
Yeah, I don't
telling
want
you
China,
what you know.
that.
There has to be a level of freedom, even if it's people that are crazy.
Eric Stryker is fucking sucking China's dick too hard sometimes.
Dude, I don't even listen to that stuff. I just like I just think that like we start setting aside petty differences, left, right, whatever. Like there's people that are not like far right wing or whatever that are against the system. And like frankly, like I just think that we need to start being like open minded. Really. Like I don't know. It's
I
it's
agree
on
with
petty
that
stuff.
wholeheartedly. We like that is one of the things I try and do with Futurism Forever is create dialogues between people from different backgrounds. So like I will have anarchists on the show, I will have communists, I will have fascists. Some of our guests have like gotten shit for like talking to us. Like it kind of blew up on Twitter a few weeks ago, but like Scythe was getting a lot of shit for talking to us and associating with quote unquote fascists, which our inner circle doesn't really identify as fascist exactly. You know, we went through third positionism or whatever. I was an anarchist for way longer than I was a third positionist or a fascist for, though. It's like I'm kind of like I don't know. I don't know how I define myself anymore. I'm using anarcho-futurist. I think it's the most, but it's just like a meaningless label. Like I use that on Twitter because I want to let people know what I'm about, give some indication of what I'm about. But
dude, at this point, you're just a human being. Like saying that you're a human being is already partisan. That's the thing. Is that like I love Futurism Forever because you know what? Like you know my politics. You all know who I am. But the thing is, I think there's too much partisanship on the right and the left, and it really kind of gets away at the main enemy. And like I get it, like we'll beef later, like we'll probably hate each other later, or maybe we even hate each other now. But like we can't be humans truly if we don't get like this menace out of the way. That's the way I see it. And that's what I see Futurism Forever to be. Is like, you know, for whoever's listening, like there are greater battles to be fought than like petty disagreements about life, our personal lives. And like I don't know if you saw that I shared that guy that was a Marxist Leninist about like aesthetics about MAGA and stuff. Like I think it's accurate, dude. It's just people are just sick. I don't even know how you call it. It's just being bug. But enough of my emotional rant. But like truly, I wish people would get over like the petty slights and the petty fucking bullshit.
Yeah,
that's my take.
We need to focus on what we all have in common. The system loves that we're all like fighting each other as opposed to them. Goes for like the identity politics too. Like whites fighting with black people is a lot more fucking beneficial to the system than all Americans fighting American pig empire and trying to bring that down. You know,
I agree.
We have a common enemy. We can sort our differences out at a later date, but yeah. I don't have that's one group that I like don't really include is like white nationalists. Really, I just think it's a failed like they missed the boat. Maybe it could have had some traction like 50, 75 years ago, but like that time has come and gone. George Lincoln Rockwell kind of fucked it up by marching around in fucking Nazi costumes like a fucking retard. But yeah, I have no respect for any era of that movement. I'm not sympathetic. But that's my fucking anti-Wignat rant for the day. I'm gonna stop there because I have enough haters as it is. I need to stop throwing like gasoline on the
Hey,
flame.
no, you're good, dude. We understand, man.
Yeah. I just like I hate seeing things go in like directions that are really not the best and like are not productive, are not constructive, and accomplish nothing.
Of
You're
course.
not going to have your white ethno state. We have to deal with the situation as it is. America is a multi-racial country, and like to be an effective revolutionary force, we are probably going to have cooperation between these different groups.
Yeah,
at least for the time it takes to overthrow our common oppressor.
right. I think that's you hit it on the head there, because it's like if we don't work together, guess what's going to happen? Yugoslavia, and look all this like shitty little country that it became. Now it's the United States instead of being one country. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And despite being quote unquote independent now, like most of those countries are in NATO, like Croatia and I think even Slovenia and Bosnia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Bosnia isn't in NATO,
It isn't okay.
but Slovenia, yes.
But Slovenia are. But the point is,
Albania. I mean, Kosovo is or is kind of.
Kosovo is Serbia.
Kosovo, Serbia.
Yeah, but
but one of the countries that claims to Kosovo, Albania is a part of NATO, though, and the KLA was funded by NATO. So.
Yes,
and that's the other thing too, is the banking system already is like penetrated everything. That's probably the worst infringement of sovereignty out there. And like Tito, say whatever you want about him, he would never have let that happen. You know, I don't know. That's just my take, man. But I appreciate you, Gio. I appreciate this reading. I know it's kind of an April Fool's forever.
Yeah,
but I appreciate you taking
we
this.
did. We did. It was an April Fool's joke, kind of, but like we did take the text seriously. We did engage with it. I think we had a good discussion around it. At points we were critical. At points, like we agreed with them. I agree with a lot of Evola's concepts. Like I'm heading in the opposite direction. I'm futurist gang, not trad gang. And a lot of the people who like push the like return to tradition thing are just like they're into like 1950s barbecue commercials. Like they want to return to an earlier, less shitty version of liberalism and
I think
consumerist capitalism. Like it goes nowhere. It's very cringe. It's not productive. It's just nostalgia for a romanticized version of like an earlier form of what we already have. Like, where do you think that's going to go? It's going to lead right back to where we're at.
What I would say about this, though, is I don't think this is the fault of traditionalists or even conservative thinkers. I think these people are mistaking nostalgia for conservatism and traditionalism. Like most conservative and traditionalist thinkers who are serious about what they believe say that, yeah, society does change, norms do change. They just believe that certain things have to like remain like to keep like balance and order. Like there has to be like a moral order. There's always going to be hierarchy, and we shouldn't like delude ourselves into like utopian visions of the world where all of our problems are going to be solved.
Yeah, I don't believe in utopianism. I think struggle is good. Overcoming obstacles is good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like traditionalists and conservative thinkers would agree with that sentiment, Gio.
Yeah,
I just think a lot of like internet fags. Sorry for my language, but these people have confused the aesthetics of the past and nostalgia for traditionalism and conservatism, which is just simply not the case. Sure, conservatives and traditionalists may like those things, but most of them accept that that's never going to come back.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should wrap it up now. It's been a good discussion, though. Thanks for coming on, guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Shout out to all our supporters. The Beno Gang, or not the Beno Gang, sorry. The George Bataille series is starting tomorrow. I'll try and get the video uploaded tomorrow night. If not, it'll be Sunday or early next week. And next Futurism Forever podcast episode is going to be The Art of Noises by Luigi Russolo. So until then, salute. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank God winter is over. Happy springtime. It'll be Med Boy summer soon. This summer belongs to us, but
Soft boy summer.
anyway, salute, peace. Have a good weekend.